Hello, this is Mark Peacock, and welcome to the Travel Commons Podcast. This is Travel Commons Podcast number 192, recorded Thursday, January 26th, 2023. So the second topic on today's Travel Commons Podcast is Gin Conquers the World. So here's a bit of a change-up. Usually when I'm talking about drinking on this podcast, it's about craft beer. There's even a beer tab on the top of the Travel Commons website that takes you to a page with all the podcast episodes and blog posts that talk about beer. What makes a great tap room, my best restaurants, bars, and tap rooms of 2021. Note to self, got to write the 2022 version of that sometime soon. But back in October, in episode 190, when interviewing Jeff Cioletti, editor-in-chief of Craft Spirits magazine, about his new book, Imbibing for Introverts, our conversation took a bit of a left turn, and we got talking about how gin has spread across the globe.
Yeah, let me ask you this: through your travels over the years, have you noticed any changes, any trends over the past few years as you've been sitting at bars drinking alone?
Well, the biggest, I think one thing that I find incredibly striking, and this is worldwide, I had mentioned gin. Gin has just it reconquered Europe, and it's every country now. Japan, Korea, they've got gins, and I was just also in Germany. I was in Berlin, and I was on a panel with somebody. I was talking about American craft spirits, and he was talking about European, and he was from Germany, and he said that now Germany's got like 1,000 gin brands. And like 5 years ago, they had barely any. So
I'll tell you that, you mentioned around go-tos and things like that. For me, it's either going to be craft beer or it's going to be gin, unless I'm in the UK or where I'll do whiskey. But I just think about it in Scotland and Spain. I was just in Croatia a few weeks ago. Guy walks out, has a Croatian, some Croatian gin, and they were doing gin tonic. So the big Spanish goblet style. And I said to the guy, I said, well, I'd really like to taste that gin without all the tonic and everything, because I want to see what you guys are doing with it. And back to your point about endearing yourself, sometimes the guy was like, really, you really want to? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Just gin and glass. Just give me a little bit. And he said, oh, no, that's great. And off he came and, brought the regular gin tonic. And then there was a little sidecar of just gin neat, so I could taste it alone. But you're right that, gin is the thing that you see, and everybody's gotten deep in it.
And I was just at a bar in Stuttgart on Saturday night, and it was called Botanical Affairs, tiny kind of corner pocket little bar that all they have is gin. I mean, it's not even like you go in there, you can have a beer, and they specialize in gin. I mean, everything was a gin cocktail. It's like that's all you could order. And they had so many different brands from all over the world. And the interesting thing, I think they're sort of hip to that. I want to taste it without the tonic, because when I ordered the gin and tonic, like I order a couple different gin and tonics with a couple different gins, he would pour the gin into the glass and then give me the bottle of Fever Tree on the side, sort of encouraging me to taste it first without the tonic and then pour the tonic in myself. So, and you mentioned Spain, they get most of the credit, I think, for elevating the gin and cocktail and turning it into, I don't want to say classy because that's not the right word, but like a sort of, I guess I said elevated already, but kind of a luxurious. It really is. It's an experience now.
Yeah, absolutely. With the the goblet glass and the garnish, and
a lot of people have adopted that too. Even there are places here in the States that are using it now. I found it in a lot of places in the UK that use it, and and Spanish get all the credit for that. They didn't use it in Germany though, which I found interesting. But everywhere else seems to.
Yeah, that's. I don't know why. I don't know. Is it the right weight, or is it just because the underlying gin provides a kind of a palate that people can play with. Maybe because it's just easy, because you're kind of steam distilling herbs and botanicals with pure grain alcohol. I don't know.
But I can imagine a lot of bartenders probably aren't crazy about them because or the bars themselves, because they're not stackable. Like if you put it in like for instance, if you have a Collins glass, at least you can kind of like they're tall and compact. You can kind of squeeze them on a shelf, or if they're in a rocks glass, you can stack those and everything like that. But those things take up a lot of space, and they don't really play well with others. So
those big balloon glasses.
Now, there are always local regional spirits to drink: bourbon in Kentucky, malt whiskey in Scotland and Ireland, soju in Korea, kind of the whole range of Eastern European fruit brandies, Palinka in Hungary. I mentioned Croatian rakia in the last episode. But it seems that gin has become the canvas, or I don't know, the freshly painted side of a building that young distillers want to tag with their sense of what's local. Maybe it's easier. They don't have to wrestle with expectations or regulations about what the local traditional spirit is. Also, maybe because it's easier to make. I mean, back in 2013, on our first visit to University of St. Andrews with our then high school junior Claire, I found a local microbrewery, Eden Mill. Their story was that they wanted to be a Scotch whiskey distillery, but since whiskey is legally required to age in an oak barrel for at least 3 years, after they finished filling the barrels, they needed something else to generate cash now. And since the front end of making beer and malt whiskey are pretty much the same, craft beer seemed a pretty logical way to bridge that cash gap. Fast forward a couple of years to Claire's first year at St. Andrews, Eden Mill is still making beer, still waiting for their whiskey to come of age, but now they've added gin. Their updated story: since they already had a distillation column to make whiskey, they had everything they needed to make gin. They trucked in neutral spirits, similar to Everclear from at least my college days, but I'm sure it's what they were using was a bit classier. Run it through the distillation column over a basket of botanicals, dilute it to the right strength, bottle it, sell it right away. Now, if I'm an artisanal producer, maybe then I don't have to think as much about funding stainless steel and storage, and so can think more about how I want to express my locality, my culture, in that basket of botanicals at the top of the distillation column. Eden Mill, for example, sitting on the east coast of Scotland, would use local sea buckthorn berries. On a trip to Spain, I was served Nordace gin, or Nordace gin from Galicia, the most northwest part of Spain, the bit that sits on top of Portugal. It tasted of lemon verbena and eucalyptus and bay leaf, botanicals that they say are native to Galician forests. Now, the Croatian gin I talked about with Jeff Cioletti was all about the local native juniper berries. It's an interesting twist on what has become a common complaint about global homogenization, that the world has become more the same now because of, pick your favorite bugbear, the spread of global brands, Instagram, the ubiquity of English. Gin is the latest, starting to crowd out the local native spirit scene, but with a twist, with that focus on native flavors. But with all the effort put into expressing these local botanicals, I guess I'm always surprised when bartenders want to serve them in the Spanish-style gin tonic that Jeff rightly notes seems to have just taken over bars everywhere. After giving me a whole spiel about the care the distiller has taken to infuse the locality into the gin, they then smother the 1.5 ounces of that locality with 6 to 7 ounces of imported tonic and a slice or two of an imported orange or lemon or lime. So, no, for me, give me that local gin straight, maybe over one of those huge ice cubes, so I can taste that local flavor that the distiller has been working to present. I don't know. I guess I'm swimming upstream against today's cocktail culture because I seem to be more interested in the distiller's art than the mixologists.